A Hoosier native and lifelong investigative journalist, I already had extensive knowledge of Indiana corruption. Only this time, I was observing from the inside, and what I saw terrified me. It happened when I was hired to work the Delphi murder trial as a fact-finding investigator.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Delphi Dirt. I'm Erica Morse, a native of Michigan City, Indiana, a lifelong investigative journalist, and private investigator for the last 7 years, who has had the honor and privilege to work some very high-profile cases, including the Delphi murder trial in 2024. For those of you who are returning listeners, I apologize for the delay. As I said in the last episode, which was a video, a live stream with some technical issues affecting the audio, I said that would be my swan song, and things were going to change from that moment forward. And they did. They did in a really good way. First and foremost, beginning that following day after that last broadcast, I erased all distractions from my orbit and finally had the chance to sit down and review everything Chris and I have gathered on the Delphi case, on the Tara Stevens hit and run out of Michigan City, out of the Flora fire, out of the Candy Brown case out of Michigan City, and many others. Those of you who follow this case know that other cases connect. It is no longer a secret. A lawyer with no legitimate ties to this case, other than writing a memo and a whole bunch of emails and solicitations that nobody asked him to write, has been out on YouTube convincing some very gullible women that he's in the know. Well, I don't want to be in that person's shoes moving forward. That's all I can say. When you create so much chaos and so much misinformation, eventually people will turn their sights on you. And that is what has happened here. People not affiliated with our team, who became very disenfranchised with a certain lawyer, started digging. And they refused to let up until they came up with a motive as to why this person continues to dismantle this case while claiming he's here to protect Rick Allen. And what they brought to us is highly concerning. There are allegations that this individual is related to someone who may be a person of interest in this case, a name that many of you already know well. That's all I can say right now, but we're real close to, I think, sharing those family trees. I talked to Prof about it yesterday. We're going to have him take a look at some summary reports. He's like, don't send me that data. I can't, I don't want to look at those things and try to translate. But once Prof has a chance to weigh in on what has been brought to us, then I think I'll feel more comfortable coming forward with it, because if he sees glitches or concerns, then we can tackle those and address them. From where I sit, if this is true, then it will explain why there's this really good, organized, professional, yet chaotic effort to distract and dismantle a solid retrial or appeal for Rick Allen. What we have been blessed to see over the last few weeks is everything that we gathered so carefully and so well from the time Tara Stevens was hit and killed in September of 2020 to when we were approached in 2023 to work on Rick Allen's defense. And once we put all of those pieces together recently, in the last 5 to 6 weeks, I would say, it was like this implosion of newly discovered evidence. And not just for Delphi. The reason it was so important to sit down and have that time of clarity and the ability to review everything we had captured was because we were moving at such a hurried pace between June? I think it was June, July of 2023 up until the trial started in October of 24. And actually through trial, towards the end of trial, post-trial, post-conviction, like we started trying to get up to speed in February of 2023 when we were first approached about this case, but we didn't actually get our hands on the discovery materials, the 8 terabyte hard drive, until months later, because it may not be a well-known fact, but our agency application was stalled by the state of Indiana. And the private security board was run at that time by none other than ISP Superintendent Doug Carter, the man who was leading the pressers and being the spokesperson for ISP regarding the Delphi case. So we had this long stall, a stall that is well beyond what most agencies experience, forcing us to get up to speed quickly. So over those next 2 years, not only did we read millions of pages of information in discovery and review thousands of photos and videos and audios and all this stuff that was contained within, but we then had to go out and investigate. And that meant interviewing people. And when you're sitting in front of someone conducting an interview, especially one as critical as this, you record it so that you can capture statements, so that you can fact check, so you don't lose your place and forget something. That had not been done effectively at all. And the reason it had not been done was because of what we're going to talk about in the next episode, which is, was the defense intentionally distracted? And the answer is yes. The defense team Oh, I'm going to make so many people bad by using that term. The defense team on every level was intentionally derailed and distracted. Whether it be personally, professionally, financially, or legally. From Kyle Fortson to Erica Morse and Christine Salzer to Jason Jensen to Matt Hoffman, all of us were distracted. To Andy and Brad, every single one of us found ourselves with problems that we did not have prior to signing on to this case. And those problems ate up a good portion of our time fighting for ourselves. Brad and Andy had to take this case to the Supreme Court to stay on it. Anyway, we will get into all of that in this really extensive episode coming up next time. That's what this one was supposed to be about. That's what we've actually been preparing for the last few weeks. However, the universe had other plans. Over the last 3 to 4 weeks, we have seen an unexpected movement, a shift. People in positions of authority who are guilty of being involved in these crimes and these cover-ups, and who were in positions to direct others to also be involved, to also look the other way. Some of those people have been dethroned. One in particular who is critical to the success of taking down corruption in Michigan City and LaPorte County. And that is Chief of Police, former say it with me, former Chief of Police, Marty Corley. Now, I've known Marty since high school. I have followed his career in law enforcement closely for various reasons. And Marty, or former Chief Corley, as we can call him, has been in a position to direct the narrative for a long time on what police and the community hear and see and know and learn. But he's also been in a position to allegedly, hypothetically, cockblock certain efforts to take down some bad guys. Throughout the years, our team has been brought information by first-hand witnesses of people in the community who are about to be raided, who have familial connections to the former chief, and magically, within hours before those raids were to occur, those people seem to be tipped off. Now, I'm not making a direct allegation here, God forbid, because if I do, I might find myself the subject of another illegal subpoena by the district attorney's office and Sean Fagan. Prosecutor Fagan, for the record, a subpoena has to have a case number on it to be legal, which is why I refused to give you my confidential and sealed work product that was under gag order and couldn't be given to you when you tried to intimidate me into telling you what I knew 2 years ago. And when I didn't comply with your mafioso demands, you then, along with others in law enforcement at the helm, went on a full-blown rampage to destroy my life. Personally, professionally, financially, mentally, everything. And for a while, you were successful. Until that pesky little thing called a trial came a-calling. And you knew that you could not take this thing to trial. That's why one of your prosecutors quit. That's why your second one basically said, I'm not putting my license on the line. You don't know what we know. People are angry about what happened to me. Professional, ethical people with integrity are angry about what happened to me in our legal system. They know it is a farce. And If you'll notice, I don't have fear or intimidation in my voice anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. You guys tried to beat me and you flippin' lost. Like, how pathetic is that? Oh, by the way, these are the same yahoos that want you to believe that Rick Allen is a guilty man. And if you think, okay, let me say it like this. They made so many mistakes in their effort to put me behind bars. They left such a paper trail. They were so sloppy. Imagine how sloppy they were in 7 years on Delphi. There are a million mistakes that were made. There were so many loose ends that were left completely unattended to the extent that I now have the leverage. Our team now has the leverage. And that will become evident as we move forward. Beginning with that episode about, was the defense intentionally distracted and derailed? The answer is yes. But for the purposes of this one, I want to address and celebrate two huge things that have happened over the last few weeks. One of them happening late yesterday that has changed the game and then one this morning. Actually, there's a third now that's going to start to help us lay this out. The first is the public pressure that was put on Mayor Angie Nelson Deutsch out of Michigan City to terminate then Chief of Police Marty Corley. And on September 8th of this year, Chief Corley was in fact demoted down back to the rank and file. Here is the press release from Mayor Angie Nelson Deutsch dated September 8th of 2025. Mayor Angie Nelson Deutsch today announced a change in leadership at the Michigan City Police Department. Chief Marty Corley will return to the rank and file, and Steve Forker has been appointed as the new Chief of Police effective September 14th to facilitate the transition of department leadership. Now, Mayor Nelson Deutsch emphasized that the leadership transition reflects the city's commitment to strengthening public safety, accountability, and communications with residents. I'm sure it does. Specifically, Mayor Angie identified 4 areas where the city will work closely with Chief Forker and the leadership team at MCPD to enhance communication and transparency around critical incidents, strengthen community and police partnerships, support officers with training and resources to meet today's challenges, and to keep public safety at the forefront of Michigan City's future growth. It would have been helpful had we received maybe a short narrative on how those things will happen now versus why they weren't happening under Chief Corley. We haven't addressed this yet. It will be the subject of an entire episode. Each one of these subjects, these kind of underlying and secondary efforts, deserve its own attention. And that includes the number of whistleblowers in our community who, over the last probably 5 or 6 years now, have come forward and tried to stop what is happening and stop what has happened. Some of them are police officers and now former police officers. And one of the biggest allegations from these former law enforcement officials is that when they reported senior official and chief of police Marty Corley to internal affairs, instead of their reports being taken up the chain of command around Chief Corley, they were instead taken to Chief Corley, resulting in those officers losing their jobs, being threatened with false charges, defamation of their character, blacklisting and blackballing within the law enforcement employment community. And these people still had the gumption and the integrity to come forward to our team and spill what they know. And it's not just cops, former cops. We have people from the courthouse who have come forward, people from corrections, many, many whistleblowers, guys. More than I think anyone realizes. Some of us have been arrested. A few have already settled. If you guys want to know why you have a wheel tax, look at the amount of settlements that are taking place behind the scenes with your tax dollars to shut people like me up. My lawsuit hasn't even been filed yet, and it's going to be the most expensive of them all thus far. Because what they did to me was to not just protect a financial conspiracy or embezzlement or a cover-up of that nature, real estate cover-up, like some of their other things, but mine was to cover up a double homicide. Mine was to ensure the conviction. No, I'm sorry. Mine was to ensure the false conviction of an innocent man for crimes he did not commit. So the lengths that these officers and officials went to in order to silence me and discredit me is even worse than some of the other whistleblowers who have already settled. And the pattern, just so you're aware, with all of these whistleblowers who were falsely charged and arrested, is that none of our cases made it to trial. And the reason being is because had they gone to trial, their efforts would have been exposed. And so they talked every single whistleblower into a pretrial diversion and basically said, if you stay clean and keep your nose clean for 6 months and don't piss us off, then these charges will be dismissed against you. Well, I was in a different boat. I was in the middle of investigating the Delphi trial, and I couldn't stop. And so my decision to stay on the case and not be intimidated off the case like the police wanted resulted in me getting hit with some severe false charges of animal abuse, which were designed to make me look like a monster, to make me look like a sociopath or a psychopath, to enhance false rumors on social media about me hurting my own children. All of these things that were done, the swatting call that happened on me in May of 24, all of that was designed to make me look uncredible and unstable, so that when I sat down to share this with you all, you would do what a few people are doing, which is saying, ha, Erica, you need some mental health help. No, I don't. Because trust me, I've already been there. If you think that whistleblowers in our county haven't had to talk to specialists and professionals about what's happened to us, whatever, man. I've been in trauma therapy for what they've done to me. I was falsely arrested. I'm a woman who was framed out to be a monster, an animal abusing monster. I'm a mother and a wife and a friend, and to do that to me was extremely damaging to my children, to my family. Hell, members of my own family turned on me. Anyway, Marty Corley being demoted from the PD is a huge win for the community. It also took away his power. And once his power crumbled overnight, it paved the way for more people to feel comfortable speaking up. If that in and of itself wasn't enough to open the floodgates, so to speak, yesterday, our community was shocked by a press release that was issued by the Northern District of Indiana for the U.S. Attorney's Office that seemingly came out of nowhere and supports everything we've been telling you for the last 5 years. This is the one that came out of nowhere. It is from the United States Attorney's Office, Northern District of Indiana, dated yesterday, Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. Now, this is out of South Bend, and we'll talk about South Bend. This is out of South Bend. Michigan City man sentenced to 54 years in prison. Dateline, South Bend. Neil Lachmund, 46 years old, of Michigan City, Indiana, was sentenced by United States District Court Judge Damon Lichty after pleading guilty to sexual exploitation of children, production of child pornography, and production of transportation of obscene material for sale or distribution, announced Acting U.S. Attorney M. Scott Proctor. Lachmund was sentenced to 54 years in prison, followed by life on supervised release. A restitution hearing will be held on a later date to determine the amount of restitution owed to the victims of the offenses. According to documents in this case, Lachmund produced images and videos of sexual abuse material. His crimes were committed over a 10-year period, during part of which he was employed as a law enforcement officer. He then distributed those images and videos to other people using the internet. Forensic analysis of his electronic devices revealed that he possessed tens of thousands of additional images and videos. Now, I will link this presser in the comments section. I will leave it up here for you to look at for a minute. But it is the part down here that I want to highlight. This case was investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Indiana State Police Internet Crimes Against Children Unit, also known as ICAC. The case was prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Hannah T. Jones. A press release from a U.S. Attorney's office includes every necessary word, and sometimes what you don't see in the press release is more telling than what is, such as the lack of credit or the omission of LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, where he was an officer at the time he committed these crimes. Like Michigan City Police, the jurisdiction in which he lived at the time of these crimes. Why weren't those agencies involved in this investigation? Well, it can be claimed that a task force was created because this is a task force, okay? FBI, Homeland, ISP, ICAC, there is a task force consisting of those agencies. I know because our team was in a meeting with that very task force earlier this year, those three agencies. But what is notable is the lack of involvement from the local law enforcement agencies. Because there is one case that we know of where MCPD was invited in. So when local law enforcement is omitted from a case such as this, it is just as telling as when they are involved. Neil Lachmund was a Michigan City resident who worked for the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department at the time he committed these crimes. And those agencies were not asked to assist in this investigation. Neil Lachmund, 46 years old, of Michigan City, Indiana, was sentenced by U.S. District Court Judge Damon Lichty after pleading guilty. A plea agreement involves cooperation. Now, what's so important to our team about that, aside from the fact that Neil Lachmund was a well-known and well-respected member of the community with connections to decades of police officers, people who consider him friends, who are stunned after reading this yesterday and today. But the knowledge and experience that our team has in knowing that when words like, he then distributed those images and videos to other people using the internet. Forensic analysis of electronic devices revealed that he possessed tens of thousands of additional images and videos. That tells us the list of conspirators is long. It also comes straight back to a tip that I sent in 2022. So this email, it is dated Thursday, March 10th, 2022 at 7:25 a.m. from info@victimsnewsonline.com, that's me, to Abby and Libby tip at CACOSHRF.com, which is Unified Command, the website to accept tips. Good morning. In the course of investigating the hit-and-run death of Indiana resident Tara Stevens, our team came across information we feel your task force needs to have. Allegations have been made by 2 former employees of a certain establishment and a certain establishment in Michigan City, Indiana, involving potential child exploitation and trafficking. The primary individuals involved are owners investors John Doe A and John Doe B. The housekeeping staff claims that they were called in several times in the middle of the night to Establishment A to clean up rooms not registered to customers and found certain items of concern. Soiled and bloodied twin mattresses stacked up against the walls. The rooms only have king and queen beds, along with soiled underwear and jeans that looked like they belonged to a young male. Former staff also reported hearing statements such as, "No, no, no," and "You're not done yet." The clientele at Establishment A reportedly consists of many single, upscale men with out-of-state plates. We are told they book rooms and leave in the middle of the night. That's when they, the staff, were reportedly called in to clean the rooms. A second employee contacted the family of Tara Stevens, but is too afraid of John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 to speak to our team on the record. However, John Doe 1 and John Doe 2 are involved in both Establishment A and Establishment B, and staff feels something sinister could be taking place at both establishments. When staff confronted John Doe B with these concerns last year, it was reported that John Doe B removed the mattresses from the upstairs rooms the same day. It was reported when staff confronted John Doe B with these concerns last year, it was reported that John Doe B removed the mattresses from the upstairs room the same day and an apartment belonging to John Doe A. The mattresses were then reportedly taken to John Doe B's residence at, redacted, LaPorte, Indiana, where they were placed in a burn pile and burnt. However, a witness claims she and a friend went to the burn pile, where they also found rope, a children's sized chair. John Doe B has no young children in his household. Furthermore, the witness believes John Doe B could be involved in the Anthony Schatz profile. Although our team has yet to find any direct connections for John Doe B to that username, she is adamant that she has heard that name before, a reference to John Doe B's name and his association to the establishment. Thanks and best regards, Erica Morse, private investigator. Now, at the time that I wrote this, the Delphi case was still wide open. Rick Allen had not been arrested. We weren't, and when I say we, I mean Chris and I, we weren't digging into the Delphi case. In 2022, we were knee-deep in preparations for Sean Adkins's trial in Texas, and that was, quite frankly, the only case we were able to address at that time. There was so much to prepare for that trial. So here we are. We get this information. We send it to Unified Command, not knowing who we can trust with the details in Michigan City or LaPorte, anywhere in LaPorte County. And we never receive any follow-up. Now, the details contained in this tip, in this email, are not the only pieces that we were given by these witnesses. That is something we have learned, especially with Indiana and Texas law enforcement agencies, is that like how police often hold back a detail to see if the killer knows it, we often hold back a detail and give it to a different agency. And we do that to see if one agency acts upon it while another ignores it. It helps us establish a clear pattern of which agencies are either dismissing our information or not getting it or failing to follow it or investigate it, or if they are involved in protecting that information from ever making it to light. So there are all these things that we do to kind of test the cops when we send in tips. And I can't think of an instance in the last probably 4 to 5 years where we haven't sent a tip into one agency that hasn't been duplicated to at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 others. Our level of distrust with Indiana law enforcement, the public official system, from top to bottom is so broken that we have started to withhold information from people we have trusted for a long time because they are too close to the region. Their involvement with Michigan City PD, LaPorte County Sheriff's Department, has clouded their judgment and their abilities to step back, keep an open mind, and consider the fact that cops may be hurting children, that judges may be hurting children, that lawyers may be hurting children. So the Neil Lachmund arrest is a big deal. Why? A few reasons. First of all, it specifically states there are tens of thousands of images distributed to many people throughout the internet. Well, again, those people are all culpable. They have that data. They have those images and those videos. Who did they share it with or sell it to? How many thousands of devices or hundreds of thousands of devices and accounts have these images and videos and files been passed through? How many of those are public officials? How many of those? There are so many paper trails now and digital trails. There are so many rabbit holes to follow now because of just these tens of thousands of images. And if you're in Delphi land, okay, here's something I'm going to say. If my Delphi peeps want to feel special, here's that bone I'm going to toss to y'all. Michigan City residents and LaPorte County residents as a whole do not yet understand what's happening. They don't get it yet, okay? And for the last few years, I've been very angry at my community because I kept trying to tell them, and it wasn't clicking. Well, you all have done such an amazing job of digging into Delphi and now Flora that this stuff is going to make sense to you faster than it will to them. And we need you guys to help us spearhead this conversation. If you see people from Michigan City or LaPorte or Northern Indiana asking questions in the comments section, please answer them respectfully, civilly, kindly. We don't want this to be a place for confrontation. We need this to be a place for collaboration because y'all are so far ahead of this curve. And if you go back to that presser, let's take a look here. What you don't see anywhere in this presser is a mention of Neil Lachmund's distribution system. Okay, so if you're in Delphi land, I know you're like, oh, I know what that means. Yes, you know what that means. Michigan City doesn't get it yet. So let's go there, guys. let's find the connection that we all know probably exists somewhere. All it's going to take is one image, one video, one file, manufactured, produced, or distributed by Neil Lachmund to end up in Keegan's Dropbox. And we are going to throw the biggest party we have thrown in I don't know how long. Like, y'all know the significance of that potential connection. So help us find it. We know it's there. Because here's the thing. What we also didn't say in that 2022 email, or what I didn't say in that 2022 email, was because I actually didn't have that information. I only had the first piece back then, and then second and third pieces didn't come till much later. There is yet a third establishment that was referenced in those tips to us. We held that back from Unified Command because it involved cops. There's a third establishment. It's outside of city limits, on its way to LaPorte in the county. A very secretive place where police officers are reportedly doing a lot of things. And it's so bad that the staff of this establishment are forced to sign non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, if they want to keep their jobs. We have had employees, former employees of that establishment, come forward to our team and share that information, and that's a problem. Then you go a couple more miles up the road to a very big property, a sprawling property, and what's happened there and what's allegedly happening there, and to whom it belongs, is probably a whole other episode that's going to make you hurl. I'll say this, for those who think we're bluffing, it destroyed childhood memories for Chris and I at Christmas. There are 4 cases. Now, the bulk of our conversation today has been focused on the Delphi case and Tara Stevens. But there are actually 4 cases that create this beautiful ensemble of newly discovered evidence. And old evidence that we had, statements we gathered as far back as 2012 when Candy Brown Morris disappeared, that now have merit and value. And Delphi people, here we go. Of course, the Flora file plays a massive part of this. The reason they had to distract us, all of us, the defense peeps, is because connecting Flora to Delphi would have been bad enough. It would have blown everything. Okay, let's get that clear. We received a directive from someone, I'm not going to say who. I'm sure y'all can figure it out. Solve Flora, you solve Delphi. And she was right. But then when you add in Candy and Tara, Candy Brown Morris from Michigan City and Tara Stevens, when you add in those 2 cases, it expands the territory and the players even cross over. Let me give you an example. It wasn't until October of last year, mid-trial, that Chris and I were directed to conduct an interview with a former decision maker in the initial investigation in Delphi, someone who had a lot of decision-making power in the beginning. And we were directed by the lawyers to interview that person. We did. It was one of the 4 days that Chris and I weren't in court through the entire trial. If we weren't in court, it was because we were on assignment. So we had like a 2.5 hour long interview with him that day. And in that interview, we brought up a name that many of you in Delphi land know. But for safety reasons, and let me say this, it's in a show of good faith. How about I say it that way? Using an acronym here will allow me to show some good faith. When that high-ranking official told us the importance of KLM to this case and Central and Indiana as a whole, it invited additional information to be located almost immediately. Now we're sitting in this is one of those things I'm talking about where we have to go back and review what we've just learned, because sometimes they say something and we have to stick with that, and then we kind of dismiss the next 2 or 3 words there because we're stuck on this thought. We went back that night, fortunately, immediately, and reviewed and re-reviewed that conversation because it was so critical. was a turning point for us. And we're sitting in our Airbnb in Monticello, and I pull this person's my case. And that is when I learned that KLM had been not only released from prison, but had been released to my hometown of Michigan City and had been living one street over from me at the time all of my problems began. My hardcore stalking at the house, the rehab house that I bought in Michigan City. That's the subject of a ridiculous smear campaign. KLM was living one street over from me in a house owned by a local attorney who works for a firm whose name is everywhere every time we turn around. I'll say it like that. And when I realized that, it clicked on that other thing that we already knew about connecting Delphi to Michigan City, which was something in the Franks memo. This initially came in as a tip, so I won't speak to specifics. So certain details must be omitted, especially right now. So I can't, and also I can't show the tip. If others have shown it, that's on them, but I can't. That's a violation in my mind. And I know it's a violation of the NDA, and that's one of those things that actually could hurt Rick. So anyway, there was a tip, and it's been heavily discussed, and it's been tossed out within the third-party defense, so I'm not violating discovery by alluding to it, okay? But there was a tip that two guys made a stop in Delphi leading up to the girls' abductions. They were there to pick up a large quantity of methamphetamines that were then to be driven in a semi-trailer by those two men and delivered to Michigan City. And when we learned when we learned that night after interviewing this cop and then put it together that she is represented by those lawyers in our town and was living in a home owned by one of them, game over. We had him. I have never, in all of the times of that Delphi trial where we thought we found critical newly discovered evidence, to me that is huge because it is proof of the region-wide and statewide corruption. It is proof that everything we said about Tara's case was right. It was accurate. Whether people want to like it or admit it or accept it or not, I'm not going to say names anymore because they're not playing fair, okay? They're not playing fair. If I could fight these guys with my fists and they would do that, cool, game on. But they're not. They're hurting people. They're targeting kids. They're going after folks they shouldn't be going after. They're breaking some rules even for their own organizations. And this is the part I have been most excited to say. So now you have this big mess on your hands. And how do I say this kindly? Holman, Swistek, Corley, Mullins, others, Fifield, Vito, they left some pretty big holes in their stories. And I can only imagine the conversations that are taking place behind the scenes from those to whom they answer. I cannot imagine how angry you are that they have botched this, that they have left such a gaping trail, and that anger has to be driving fear and desperation in them as to how they are going to fix this. I am here to tell you that they are not. They can't. They were so sloppy. They were so sloppy with me, with my arrest. They were so sloppy with every effort they made to distract and derail the defense. We haven't even gotten yet. We haven't even touched what we know about what you did to our boss. So now we have a mess on our hands. We have thousands upon thousands of people who don't buy a word of their story. We have YouTubers and producers and journalists and advocates and web sleuths and armchair detectives all across the world who 9 months after a conviction, 10 months after a conviction, refuse to give up. because they made such a mess of this case. They left so much evidence. They were so sloppy. I cannot stress that enough. And now that we have what I call the four corner cases, Candy Brown, Tara Stevens out of LaPorte County, the Flora Fire, and Delphi out of Carroll County. Now that we have gone back and re-reviewed all of this stuff, and I finally had a chance, let me say this. There are so many people, like I would say 50 minimum, who sent information just to me, not counting the stuff you've sent to Chris over the years that I hadn't had a chance to review yet. But all of those long emails that you put time and effort and energy into with 20 and 30 and 40 attachments, and you got mad at me because I hadn't responded to it yet and I hadn't looked at it. Guys, I didn't have time to look at it back then. So I set it aside, compartmentalized it in the back of my brain, and knew that there would come a time where I could get to it when I wasn't fighting for my own freedom and had the mental fortitude and just the mental space to take in the next chapter of this mess. So now I've gone through those, and you have to understand, God, just aside from the emails, okay? So we'll say there might have been 50 emails in my inbox. There are probably 50 individual people, in all fairness, who have invested countless hours into putting together full-fledged presentations of information that were sent to us days, weeks, months, and even in a couple cases 2 years ago. And we have just now re-reviewed them with fresh eyes, or I have. And what I do is I have all that stuff recorded. I have all that stuff saved. So I went through everything, and then I call Chris at night, give her the synopsis. This is a summary of what we found. Holy crap, we forgot about this. Holy crap, I found a comment today with this name in it. What does it mean? We are so much more versed in what we're looking for now than we were in February of 2023 when we were approached about working this case. And thanks to some folks out there who have taken it upon themselves to invest time and energy and resources and research and their own money and their own effort and their own time away from their loved ones to put together these incredible arguments, I want you to know they are no longer falling upon deaf ears. And what you all have managed to accomplish, Rick Allen deserves to know how many strangers are out there fighting for him, fighting for his freedom. And I promise you, he knows. I promise you, he will know. He won't know every detail, okay? We're too far beyond that, guys. There's just no possible way that every person who has contributed every detail and every piece of information and evidence, there's no way Rick will ever know all of your contributions. But he will know that thousands upon thousands refused to give up. He won't even know what we did. Like, guys, it's what you have put out into this world is not just going to free Rick eventually and get justice for Abby and Libby, for Tara, for Candy, for Kiana, Kiara, Cariel, and Keon, and for countless other victims whose names you don't yet know. So, anyway, now we've got a mess. We've got these cops who screwed the pooch. We have an innocent man in prison. We have some businessmen who are very angry and want a solution. What if I told you I have one? And mine is a lot less messy. If I were running this show, I would not count on these men to bail them and you out of this. I would, however, hear out the investigators who have done all the work. Just a thought. Because surprisingly, and quite frankly, I mean, from where I'm sitting almost biblically, there is a way out, and it allows Rick Allen freedom. I have spent the better part of 6 weeks deciding if I was willing to extend this olive branch of potential negotiation. But lives are usurped, they are disrupted and destroyed in some ways. And I am trying to find a solution that benefits all. Now, I can't wait for the blowback on this one. And all I'm going to tell you, I guess what I can say to that is, you are not walking in my shoes. You are not walking in Chris's shoes, or Kathy's, or Rick's, or their families, or our families. Therefore, your opinion of how we find a solution can't matter. We are living a nightmare that most people can't comprehend. My nightmare is nowhere near that of Rick and Kathy Allen. They botched it, and they botched it badly. And then they doubled down to arrest me, to shut me up, and inadvertently made me a victim of this case, which means whereas I should have been stopped from investigating the day of Rick's conviction, the fact that y'all arrested me and framed me during his trial and tried to use a Delphi reporter to destroy me, you've given me the right to keep going. You've given me the right to investigate the crimes against me and clear my own name. You blew it. And that is what I want to leave people with today. These are not the men with whom you should be negotiating. These are not the men you should be looking to clean up the mess. We have the answers. We have the solutions. All I want is Rick Allen out of prison and a couple of cops out of a job. It's not too much to ask. Thank you for joining me on this one. I have missed sharing these details. I have missed dropping the dirt, spilling the tea, whatever you want to call this, because none of this changes until it's all exposed and Rick's out of prison. That's it. I hope to be more consistent with these and get back on track. I'm working on that next episode right now about the distractions and derailment of the defense. Until next time.